So, Dr. Firdaus, shall I start?
Please go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of organizers, Jammu and Kashmir Economic Association, SSHI, and our collaborating institutions, Global South Research Foundation, BS of the Rahman University, School of Business, Manav Rachna University, Faridabad, and College of Vocational Studies, University of Delhi. I extend my warm welcome to all distinguished participants, faculty members, researchers, and scholars to today's session of 15-day International Faculty Development Program on Research Publication Excellence from Manuscript Preparation to Successful Journal Acceptance. Thank you all for joining us. Today's session is titled The Journey to Publication, Reflections from a Firm-Level Sectorial Study of International Manufacturing. Before we begin, I would like to reiterate, I request all the participants to kindly keep their microphones on mute throughout the session. We will have Q&A towards the end, where you will be welcome to ask your questions. So it's my pleasure and privilege to introduce our esteemed speaker, Dr. Anjali Tandon. Dr. Tandon is an associate professor at Institute for Studies in Industrial Development, ISID, New Delhi. She holds a master's degree in applied operations research and a bachelor's degree in mathematics. Her doctoral research and energy use in the Indian economy using input-output models with special reference to India's international trade. Before joining ISID, she worked with National Council of Applied Economic Research, NCAER, and Indian Institute of Mass Communication, IIMC. She was also a visiting researcher at University of Melbourne in 2010 and has contributed to the Global Trade Analysis Package, GTAP version 8 database of Purdue University, USA. With more than 25 years of experience in the field of energy, industry, and trade, Dr. Tandon has made significant contributions to economic research. Her recent book, Labor and Capital Use in Indian Manufacturing Sectoral Aspect, published by Routledge in 2024, reflects her deep expertise in manufacturing sector. Ma'am, we are truly honored to have you with us today. Without further ado, I invite Dr. Anjali Tandon to deliver today's session. Ma'am, the virtual platform is all yours.
I was part of my acting, the JKPM, eco organizers, and Firdaus for initiating this program, for thinking of putting their thoughts and efforts around this journey from towards publication output and developing a full 50-day program towards that. So, which is a very different topic for a research methodology or for early career scholars. So let me start with my presentation, and I have one slide to give. Allow me to share my screen. Yes. Dr. Ajaz, my screen is seen. Hello. Is my
Yeah,
screen
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it is
I will then start. This is today's lecture is about the journey to publication, and I'm going from my experience on a specific paper, which I will show you a little later in the presentation. So I have structured the presentation in a way so that the more generic things I will try to share with you in the first half of the presentation. And then I will quickly take you to the paper and try and relate those learnings. How did I try to implement them when I was trying to publish this. So, first of all, as you can see from this page, the background has a big fan which is blurred and has many different shades of colors. So I purposely chose this as my title because the journey to publication is a mixed bag of many colors, many shades. Some of these colors are your personal likings, some of these colors are not your personal likings. But given that you have to cross every single subject. So that is why I purposely mixed up a mixture of colors, trying to indicate that there are some stages which are easier in the sense you are more comfortable with other liking to address, to pass through your stages. There are other stages which are relatively more difficult to pass through. I think this is how it is. So my first question to the participants would be, why do we actually, why publish? Why do we publish? So before I take you to my slide, can I have some prompters in the chat box if some of you would like to respond to this question? Why do we publish at all? Why don't we live without publishing? It's all right to do a research and then subscribe. Why is there a need to publish? So there might be different answers from different people. If you have any problems, otherwise I can go down there. And I'm sure some of these will resonate with what is in your mind. So why do we publish? So if you look on the left side, lot of reasons which immediately come to your mind are that if you have to complete a degree, then it is generally mandated that you publish out of it. War is being or maybe it could be due to emotional requirements that you work or it could be to attain a tenure, a longer tenure for development. It could be as part of your performance agreement that might be published. One or a year or 1 to 2 years. It would sometimes argue that to improve our site condition, our scholar writing.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt. Your voice is actually not clear. It is coming very low. Please, sorry.
Give me a second. Give me a second. I will just change my earphones and I will put on the mix. That is better. Thanks, guys. That you pointed it out for me. How is it now?
Ma'am, now it's better. Yes.
Okay, okay. That's
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for pointing it out, Ali. So to the participants, my question was, why do we publish? So, many questions. There is something in the chat. Let me look at it. Voice is not clear. Okay. I hope it's clear now, Salimullah. So we generally try to publish, engage in the process of publication if we have to complete our degree. That's the earliest stage where we engage for publication activities. It could also be due to for some promotional requirements, performance appraisals, improve ranking, Google Scholar citations, to secure research funding, because sometimes fundings are tied up to your being an expert in that area, and expertise is not something which is self-claimed. It should come from the broader fraternity. So how do you do that? If you have published regularly for a period of time in a specific area, then your chances of getting a funded activity, research project in that specific area are higher. And it can also be sometimes to enhance an institutional reputation. So for instance, if there is an institute that works on industrial development, so a lot of publications from those faculty members or people who are working there in those areas will bring the institute to the forefront of policymaking in industrial development. So the institute gets recognized, and in the process, it can improve its reputation, its funding capacities, and some other benefits also are attributed to it. But these are all reasons, and these are all, reasons. This is not the real purpose. Why is a publication required? So try to think through, why does a university mandate you publishing a paper before you are awarded a degree? Essentially, the purpose of publication is that when you do some research activity, you are generating knowledge, you are creating some knowledge base. So if you keep it to yourself, after all, what is the gain in that? Why has the university spent on your research? Why was a supervisor attached to you? Why were you put into a coursework at all? Not to keep it inside you. It was eventually done to 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 benefit the mankind, to benefit those benefits could be economic, social, environmental, or any other aspect of that. But the benefit of your research, knowledge, your understanding will reach the society or the desired stakeholder only if you disseminate it. And that dissemination of knowledge comes through publication once it goes out into the world. So understand it in this way. If the World Wide Web, which is www, which we do every time we use the internet, that's the first three alphabets we type, www dot, and then say google.com or something. So when Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web in 1989, what would have been the situation today if Dr. Lee would not have shared this knowledge to the rest of the world? There would have been no digital economy, there would have been no sharing of information, and so many other developments would not have happened today. So this happened. So we are doing this virtual course only because many years back an invention of www was done. Not only was it done, it was shared with the rest of the world. So publication is that process which shares your academic research to the rest of the world, and so that whatever you have created is used by others. And when it is used by others, it creates impact, which serves the basic purpose of any activity. If it is used for a benefit, your purpose is done. You have served your purpose. So that is the underlying reason why your university mandates that you publish before you are awarded a degree. Because in that process, if your knowledge is accepted by a peer-reviewed journal, a reviewer has accepted it, that means they have found some worth in that. Being blind reviewers, they have found something useful in that which does not exist as of now. So your contribution is well acknowledged and it goes out to the rest of the world to make its use. So that is why we publish. That's the underlying reason everything is tied to publication in the academic world. So my next slide would attempt to clear some myths and tell you some realities about publication. So the first myth, so some misunderstandings are there with regard to what is publication. So we often think, particularly when we are doing our doctoral thesis, that publication is an objective. I have to reach this milestone. But the reality is that it's not an objective, it's a milestone, it's an outcome of your research. So it's something which happens after you have conducted your research. That means whatever your findings are, when you take it out to the rest of the world, as I was just elaborating in my earlier slide, that is the publication. It's an outcome. It's not your objective. You have to reach that stage by creating that outcome. And we often think that the second myth is that a sophisticated empirical analysis would guarantee publication. So there are two sides. Without a sophisticated empirical analysis, a publication cannot be done. Or another way to take it up is that if the empirical analysis is very sophisticated, it ensures that there would be a publication. And the answer to both these is no, because complexity of your analysis is not a guarantee that it would be published. That insight from your analysis is the most important thing to make it publishable. So the simpler it is, the deeper it is, the clearer the message is, the more would it be appreciated by the reviewer, the editors of the journals, or wherever you are trying to send your paper for publication. Now, when we are publishing, we often tend to think people who work on very large data sets, they think that research starts with data. The answer is a big no. The research actually starts with a question that you put up before yourself, a problem that you decide, that you identify, and you decide to answer, to find a solution to. Research starts with a question. It doesn't start with the equipment. Your data is your equipment. Your question is where your research problem starts. So remember, that's why writing the synopsis is very important. In fact, in most cases, the approval of a synopsis takes about a year or so, or maybe sometimes even more, because during that process, you identify your problem statement, what you're trying to address. It takes a lot of time to screen the literature to come to just those 1, 2, and 3 questions on which your dissertation is standing up. Then the next myth is that literature that we review in a paper should ideally summarize the previous studies. That's what we actually land up doing when we are writing our thesis. But actually, it's not just about their summaries. You start with their summaries, you understand them. But ideally, your literature review should actually highlight the contradictions in literature, that these are the two schools of thought which have conflicting views, and these are the limitations for each of them, and therefore these are the opportunities or the gaps that remain. And that is why this problem which I am going to address is very relevant, is going to be going to address some issues which have not been addressed in the literature. So remember, from your literature, you should be able to bring out the gap. And the gap comes out when you talk of, the two sides of the same, and then you circle around one point. And also remember that your reviewers, they are blind in most cases, and sometimes they are not blind also. That's an emerging trend. They are not sitting there to throw your paper into the bin. They're not your enemies. They are not paid for rejections. Okay. But in the process, if the reviewer has not understood your paper or has not valued your contribution, then of course the reviewer is going to have some strong comments, observations, and in worst cases, it might be a rejection itself. So obviously, if it happens to the first ever paper which we submit, which happened to me in my academic career. So my first paper from my dissertation was rejected after a year and a half of revisions. So I was totally blown off, and I went to my supervisor and I was shattered, this, that. But then I was taught that, you take it positively or you give up and sit back home. So you have only two choices. And I chose to take it up positively. So the reviewers' comments actually helped me strengthen my manuscript. and I took those feedback as constructive, and then I revised my papers. Sometimes rewriting is also required. So don't be discouraged by that. The point is, when I'm talking to you, you might have a totally different opinion to what you are listening from my conversation. And that means if I have not been able to communicate my point to you, that's why you as a reviewer have not been convinced with my paper. So they are not enemies. It's just that either your work is not substantive enough to be identified as a contribution, or sometimes you might be sitting on some good findings, but you have failed to communicate them. So communication is also very important. And here, don't go with fancy language. The small sentences, clean grammar is the key. The next myth about publishing a paper is that once you publish the paper, you are done with it. And now you can, it is the end of the road for you. No, a good publication is where in your ending paragraph, in your conclusion, after that, you mention future work of future research areas. These are the openings for future research areas, which are not only guiding other scholars, but also your own self. So in that sense, then you can work on the same area for next 2 to 4 years or so. And in the process, if you're publishing in the same area for the next 2, 3, 4 years, then you will establish yourself as an expert in that area. You will be identified as a king in that area. Gradually it happens, but that's how good publications help you build up your CV, shape up your CV. That's wow. There's another myth that for a good quality publication, that means a Q1 kind of a journal or a very high rated journal, which is a very high citation index, etc. You must have sophisticated, modern, most up-to-date software or tools or similar things. And the answer is no. As I told you earlier, complexity is not important, and similarly, sophistication is also not important. To be modern, modernization is to help you do things quickly and in a more robust manner. So you take less time to do the same thing, and then you save a lot of time to do the same thing in a more better way, in-depth analysis. Okay, and for that, if you don't have a good understanding of your problem question, of the limitations, of the gap, then even the best of the softwares and tools will not land you up in a publication. The paper will still come back on your desk. So, for instance, to make it easy, we use AI, and there's nothing wrong with it. But remember, AI is a tool which you should use. You should not be driven by what the tool is telling you. So the quality of the information that you get from, say, ChatGPT or Claude is only as good as the prompts that you're going to give. And also, you should be able to screen the answers, understand the answers that it's going, and it should be critical investigation. You should not accept them as they are. The point here, again, what I'm trying to tell you is that don't be driven by modern tools. So if you have an access to a latest version of a software, say Python or R or something else, then it's not necessary that your paper is at top of the world. But if your problem is not worth a contribution, you will still not manage to publish. So think through the problem very clearly, and this is your foundation of your paper. Unexpected results mean that your research has failed. Never get disappointed if your results are unexpected. There are two ways to be concerned about your unexpected results. So sometimes you get a different sign or direction of your results compared to what the traditional theory is telling. Now, one way is you must go back and check your data, your methods, your operations, and everything else. Okay. So then you must do it very sincerely and very honestly and very critically, very neutrally, which becomes very difficult after giving a lot of time in writing your paper. So if it gets sorted there, then you know that your results are not unexpected. But if your signs are reversal, if your findings are contradictory, then it's very interesting, because why? You are challenging a line of thought which has been existing. You challenge a theory. And when you challenge a theory through your results, your job is to defend. So to get unexpected results is not a problem. But if you just put a full stop with your results, then it means that you don't have an explanation why are your results different from the previous studies of another author or your own previous studies. So then you have to give reasons why. Maybe your period of analysis is different. Maybe the country is, that country was developing, this is developed, or some other thing has changed. So you should have reasons to explain the unexplained. And then all your myths are gone. You are in the real world. The next slide is, what is the key to publish consistently? So it's, as I told you in my earlier slide, that one publication is not the end of your research. Once you publish, you would actually want to publish again and again and again. That confidence will strengthen over a period of time. So why does it happen that some people publish more than others? Some people publish more consistently over maybe once in 2 years or once in 18 months, they have a paper out. Whereas some people have just 1 in 5 years or so, or maybe just 1 and 2 in their lifetime or something of similar kind. There are distinguishing characters of those people who publish consistently. They are not intelligent, more intelligent than others, but they ask questions which are better framed, which are sharper to the society, to the policy, or to a specific stakeholder. So, and in some cases, these questions could be newer questions which were not relevant in earlier times, but are more relevant in today's time. So if you're trying to address a problem which is emerging, then certainly you are doing great work, because there is no literature available on that. And if you're trying to address a question in a different way, a question that has been answered by a lot of researchers earlier, in a different way, then you are adding more aspects to that. You're slicing the same thing in a different color, and you are able to bring out more insight. So that's how people take out thoughts from their questions, and the quality of the questions, the sharpness of their objectives, the relevance and the contribution to social well-being or economic development or any other enhancement is what matters. These people, these successful people, they think before they analyze. So before jumping on data, before celebrating that they have a big data at their access, they think is, what is it that I want to answer? And that point begins from understanding the theory. Where is this point coming from? What does the existing literature tell about? What is those theory? What is the doctrine there? What are the arguments? What are the counter arguments? They also spend a lot of time in designing their study. So a survey instrument, for instance, is not just prepared in one go. It can take sometimes few weeks or maybe sometimes more than a month or few months, depending upon what is the duration of the study. So the design of your study changes, develops, and that's where you need to be patient and go back to your question and think, is this going to answer my question the way I want? And there is some reiteration back and forth. And only then they come to selecting their variables. So selecting your variables from the big data, which you might have and are celebrating. So from that, if you start picking up every variable, then you are going to, have everything, but you will not be able to filter out the most useful information which is needed to answer your question. So then you have to shortlist and select your variables appropriately, which needs a lot of thinking and rethink. They tell a story. They don't just publish. Good papers have a story to tell. And remember, in our childhood, we were all very interested in stories. We would all run to our grandparents and moms when it was a story time. So if you have a story to tell, you will sell your work. But if you don't have, then then your work is little, either it's saturated or it's boring, or you are not creating that excitement. So you have to sell it in a nicer way. They good good researchers are open to criticism, and they revise their papers many times. So, and it's often, even if it goes to a good journal, it's often more than 2 rounds of revision. It can take about 18 months, sometimes up to 2 years, or even more, depending upon what the reviewer is asking you. But remember, when you have following revision, it means that the reviewer is reading your paper again and again. That effort is being put into your work. The editor is giving time to process your paper. So there is an interest in cleaning up the mess in your paper. So you should be open to that. All right. Good publishers, successful publishers, they build a research program rather than asking one question, publishing, and then stopping there. As I told you, publish in the same area for 2, 3, 4 years, maybe for 10 years or so. That's why theses take up to 5 years or 4 years or so, because then you build up a program, and then for the next 5 years, you have insights which you can expand for the next 5 years. Yeah. Consistent publication is not about extraordinary intelligence. It's more about rigorous thinking and patience, persistence to answer the question. You stick to your question and you find its answers, and you also communicate the answers in a very clean way. There are some golden rules. And remember, if I was to give you one tip from this entire presentation, it would be the first bullet on this slide. One paper should answer one question and make one contribution to the literature. And that's it. So the big problem with us when we do our thesis, research thesis, is that we have done so much of work that we are overwhelmed. And we just think, I am the person who will give the best paper under the sky. And this is my first attempt. But remember, I do want to quote, this is a very, very senior trade economist, my mentor, who told me when I joined my thesis, he told me, Anjali, your PhD is the first cut. It's not the last cut. So remember, you will have many occasions to improve your work. But if you think your first cut or your first paper is your last paper, then you are not thinking the right way. So what we often do is, all that is our understanding in our thesis work, we try to parcel it in one paper. Never do that, because the reader will just get lost into it, and you will also not do justice to your work. So if you have about 3 objectives, you should be able to bring out multiple papers, maybe 2 papers, maybe 4 papers, but don't pack them all in one paper. That skill you have to develop. So don't write a paper to report everything, and then if you do so, you will land up in a spaghetti ball of disconnected work. That line of thought could be in your thesis, but from a paper, it's a much shorter space. And remember, it's a reader. It's not your external evaluator, examiner, who's getting 6 to 2 months or maybe 9 months or 12 months to read your thesis. This is a reader of a paper. He would just decide to read your paper or not based on your abstract. And then he would look at your methodology. Then he would go to your conclusion. So based on these 3 things, then he will decide he has to spend more time, he or she has to spend more time or not. So if you're adding too much into it, you are doing injustice to the reader and you are not able to communicate your things sharply. Answer one important question, but do it exceptionally well. Add those insights around that question which nobody else would have done. That is your niche. That should be your niche. You should be able to sell your paper on a premium, not on a routine. Coherence of the, so golden rules for writing a paper, that's what I'm talking. Your all sections, introduction, literature, gap, methodology, everything should stay connected and should ultimately talk about the same point, the same problem, the same question, the same query that you have raised in your introductory section. So be very, very focused. It's like a pipe, it's like a tunnel. You only see one thing once you are into it. You don't see anything outside. Remember, this is very important, that if you have results which are statistically significant, it doesn't mean that your research is also a significant contribution. So no fancy, no complexity, no modern tools are going to ensure that your research work is significant. Your research significance comes from the question you answer and the insight you bring to answer that question. The next point is, do not confuse your data set with a paper. So if you have a good data set, big data set, large data set, diverse data set, it doesn't guarantee a good paper. You might be a jack of all and king of none. So select your variables appropriately to answer that one question. Remember, tell a story. Regression tables only provide evidence. So something is 2.5, something is minus 8.9. These numbers are quantifying something. Okay. So if you're telling so it's very good. You need to quantify things. So you are providing an evidence-based research. But then just by saying that elasticity is this process, this relationship is price elastic or not price elastic or something similar, illustrate that insight in a more simpler word. So what is the implication of that? The implication of that would be that if price changes, demand may not change. So then, as a result, what the policy might, policy insight that you are giving, that if the government is going to change the price of, say, the carbon and the demand is, say, inelastic, it may not reduce emissions. So that is the kind of insight you should bring after your numbers. So you have to tell a story in a simpler way. Good writing explains why your findings matter, not simply what they are. So not simply saying that this number is 2.8 and it is statistically significant at 1%, whereas in earlier studies it was not significant or something. No, that number is what the evidence you are creating. But then you must explain, what does this 2.8 matter? How does it answer? How does it address the problem you raised before? Okay, so don't miss out on these points, and we often do that because we just see we have done a demonstrative, illustrative, numerical exercise, and that's the end of it. No, it's just an interim stage. The real thing is the insight that you bring out from your evidence. Repeat the idea in your paper and not be something. So often when you write a paper, you use, after having written the paper, you cut, copy, paste in your abstract, and you cut, copy, paste in your conclusions from your discussion part, right? Or from your introduction part. This is something which we do in our early years. But then why? Why to do it? Because see, if I start repeating the same slide again and again and again with you for the next 2 hours, you would just get bored and you wouldn't listen to me, and you would just not appreciate this effort, right? Same is the idea. So your abstract, your discussion, and your conclusion should talk the same thought, the same problem, but in different ways. So your choice of words should be refreshing every time the reader reads. Something which we don't do because we are so fatigued in running the regressions and doing some other kind of work. So there is a pre-publication checklist. So before you take your paper out for publication, please have patience to present your work at conferences and receive the feedback in a very constructive manner. This is very useful. Present within your own institution, department, or some kind of a academic club membership that you might have, because there you will also get some information about your methodological weaknesses, and you will be able to understand, have you been able to convey your message in a clear manner or not? So before receiving a rejection, you have known in just 2 hours that your message was not conveyed. And you can sit back and work for a few more hours there. Okay. You must also, if you have some close friends whom you can depend upon, or maybe your mentors, circulate your manuscript in good faith, of course, remember, for an unbiased appraisal, and tell them that you are open to take their views. You don't want a very positive review necessarily. So you can talk to them. They will give you an unbiased appraisal. And when you get all these feedback, just don't jump to revising your paper. Just sit with the idea for maybe a few days, sometimes a week. Let it resonate in your mind. What kind of comments you have got? What discomfort have your participants in the conference, your colleagues in a brown bag seminar, or somewhere? How were you cross-questioned? And then you also think, what was your line of thought? And then you can bring them together and revise it. Ensure that your arguments are consistent through the sections. There are no contradictions in early part of your paper and in the end of your paper. And this is an important point, that you should choose a journal that fits your paper. You should choose a journal based on its scope, rather than trying to make your paper fit into the journal. So if a journal doesn't have a domain area that is more aligned with your paper or your theory, your theoretical framework, please don't try and push into the journal just because the journal is high rating. In any case, you are going to face a desk rejection. So why waste your time? The last one is really important, and I must tell you that I've benefited from this. Be realistic in your self-assessment. Be objective in shortlisting your journals for publication that you're going to consider. You must be aspirational. You must have high aspirations, but be realistic also. Assess yourself, your paper, does it fit the standards of those journal or not? And for this, you pick up its latest editions, volumes, and see what is the level of papers, what is the focus, what is the language. So you will be able to understand it. So be objective to yourself. If you're not being good to yourself, then I'm telling you, you're not doing justice to yourself by only being aspiring for a top-rated journal in your early career. I'm not discouraging. One can, and that is the wish we all have. But what I'm saying is that you should be realistic when you shortlist your journals. So now we come to how much time have I taken? It's a lot of time. Okay. Having talked a lot about some general practices, I will now turn to the specific paper from which I'm trying to relate all that I've talked in general. And for this, I just take a moment and sip in some water. Please excuse me for a moment. In the meantime, Dr. Ajaz, am I is it going fine? I hope there are no concerns. I can be heard, I can be seen, and the slides are doing okay. Do you have any reservations?
Yes, everything is going well, ma'am.
Okay, okay. I'm good to know. So I'll then proceed further. Um, okay. So now let's see. So I'm going to talk about this publication of mine, which was published in 2024. And let me double click. Okay. So see, this is a paper that was published by a journal which is published by Sage Publications. And the journal name is Millennial Asia. And the title of this paper is Rethinking the Drivers of Energy Intensity in India's Iron and Steel Firms, the role of imported intermediaries. So this is an online version, so we don't have access to this here. So what I have done is I have a PDF of it. So I'll draw your attention here between my PowerPoint and this. Okay. So okay. So you understand that identification of the question is very important. The problem statement. And where does that come? That comes from reading. And reading is of the literature has to be very strategic. So as I told you that we should read to identify. It's not only to summarize what author A, author B, author C, and author Z, X, Y, Z have done. That's not what a literature review is. Your literature review should be able to inform you and the reader, the reviewer, and the readers what is already known in that domain. What ideas, what lines of thought dominate that domain, and what are the most commonly used methods to study that area. Your literature also tells you what variables are repeatedly used. So if these are repeatedly used, there's a strong reason for you to also include them. Now, if you are bored of it and you have an insight, that's what you want to test, is that instead of this variable V, you plan to design a variable, say M, which would better proxy V, then you should still use V and check about the robustness of the results. So if your variable, your designed variable, your customized variable is giving a different information, then you can defend it. It's a very good piece of work then. Provided you can defend it. If it is giving a similar piece of information, then also you can defend the use of your new variables based on their better utility, their easy availability, their compilations, or some other reason which you would be able to find out. So what you have done, what you are going to sell to the reviewer and the reader, only you know, and that's your job to bring out. Otherwise, you are not doing justice to your own self. Literature also tells you where do findings contradict or conflict. So if these are two thoughts, two lines of school, or maybe there's another line of school, maybe three thoughts, then you cannot bypass one of them. You should have them all from your literature survey. So it has to be very strategic in the sense it should talk about all aspects, and then you come down to a point, what is it these earlier studies have not paid attention to, have limited insights on, and probably an area which is potential but unexplored at all. So, sometimes a very good research question can be something to which there is no evidence to compare in the past. Why? Because when you are taking out your findings to publish, your work will not be, there would not be a benchmark to compare your work with. Okay. So imagine some of the earliest studies which were talking of the impact of AI. There was no benchmark for those studies, those authors to to align their work with. So they were at a very early mover kind of an advantage, at a very strategically placed. But then, if those findings don't have a benchmark, you need to have an adequate defense to, convince the reviewer or the reader that this is why your results matter in a very sensible. They appear to be sensible, and that's you have to explain that part of the story. So what remains unexplained? These are the kind of things that happen. Reveal. So ultimately, from your review, from your literature review, you reveal, you highlight some opportunities for contribution which has not been done so far, and not by demonstrating how much has the author read. So this is a very common practice where scholars often say, oh, I reviewed 98 papers for my thesis. I reviewed 133 papers. That's not, doesn't matter if you still haven't understood where is the gap. These 4-5 bullets are what should come out from your literature review in a very strategic manner. And then you should find the research gap. So let me just take you to the paper, this my paper. And so I highlighted some things for a quick reference. So this is my literature review. So let me take you back to the title. So basically, in the title, you see that I'm rethinking. I'm putting fresh thought to what? To what is driving the energy intensity in
Excuse
a...
me.
Yes, please. Dr.
So are
Fiba,
you sharing the screen of your paper?
is it not shared?
No, no.
Oh, okay. Give me a moment. Good. I mean, that's nice if you have pointed it out. It's a new share. Just a moment. Let me share this. Now is it shared? Hello?
Yes, yes. Please go ahead.
Okay. Just a minute. Confirm me. Now you can see my PowerPoint?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so you can see everything. Okay. So, participants, so I was telling you that this is the paper published in 2024 in Millennial Asia, and the article is coming from Sage Publication. Now, see, look at the title. So, because I'm quickly jumping to the literature review, so I'm trying to give you some precursors there. I am rethinking, putting a fresh thought into what is driving the energy intensity, where in a country, specific sector at a firm level. And where is it that I'm putting a new thought is that what is the role of imported intermediates, right? So now let me take you. So the title is very, very informative, very informed. It talks about a lot of things. It talks about the sector. It talks about the unit of analysis. It talks about the country. It talks about the subject. It talks about the qualifier. Now, let me take you to this. Yes. So now see, when I'm reviewing, so the way I phrase it is that studies, so far, all these studies, this is one study and this one, identify that accelerated industrialization has as among the important contributors to growth for the demand in energy sources, thereby raising environmental concerns from expansion of industries, particularly those that are energy intensive, such as iron and steel. So whatever was done talked about in these two resources, these two reviews that I've done, I have tied them up to my question. My question comes little later, but it was identified at the beginning before I started working on the paper. Okay. So, and that's why I made you focus on the chapter, the title of the paper. So, you know, iron and steel, you know, energy intensity, you know, India, and some other things. So I am bringing up those, remember, what is already known. So studies identify that industrialization leads to higher energy sources, demand for energy sources, including those in iron and steel. So what is known? This is known. My literature is helping me understand what is known. Now let me go to the next question. What ideas or methods dominate? I think I highlighted something last night here. Okay. So the importance of improvements in energy intensity as a pragmatic approach is underscored by one paper, Chai and You, which is another paper, suggests that gains realized as a percentage improvement in intensity can exceed that of technology improvement, and underscoring that technology related improvements are very important for improving energy intensity. So what ideas dominate? So a large part of improving energy intensity is related to improvements in technology. That's what this literature is talking about. The third question is, what variables are repeatedly used? So if they're repeatedly used, so for instance, if you're doing a financial study, so let me tell you, okay, let me give you an example that I'm working right now. So I'm working on, say somebody who's working on environmental sustainability actions of the firm. So how much are they investing in circularity, in waste recovery, in reducing water consumption, and some similar things. Okay. So now, if I want to see how is the investor of this firm, these firms, responding to their actions, environmental actions, then can I completely forget the baseline financial model of performance? The answer is no, because the investor, the financial theory states that investors are primarily driven by profitability of the firm, its performance. So my commonly repeatedly used variables will have to be the size of the firm, the profitability of the firm, maybe some other indicators like the age of the firm. And then over and above, I will add those variables which are more attached to my research question, say environmental sustainability. What is its investment in water area, its investment in recycling, its investment in emission reduction, and some other things. But the variables which are basic cannot be ignored. So one has to gather those things from literature. So let me see if I highlighted something of. So several. So what are the variables that are repeatedly used, commonly used, frequently used? Several other studies other points regarding R&D need to be clarified. So this entire paragraph is talking of R&D, and even this further paragraph. So that means R&D is a very commonly used variable. So I should also, just not discard that thing. It's coming from the literature. So many people have worked on this area, and they have worked in the area of around the area of R&D in this domain. So I should not reinvent the wheel, go away from them. I have to add to knowledge. I don't have to erect a separate pillar in my own name. That's not how research happens. Next is, where do the findings contradict? So let me take you to my literature. Yes. So So look at this yellow focus. This shift in focus tends to deprioritize concerns related to technology, equipment, processes, thereby reducing the engagement in domestic engineering and manufacturing. So there is a shift as well. So far, earlier part of the review was talking about technology and R&D, but there is a shift. So here the word is not contradict, but shift. Those languages can vary. Then what remains unexplained? My literature. So this article extends this line of thought by arguing that India's iron and steel firms tend to allocate profits for importing capital goods to retrofit existing plants, thereby reducing the energy intensity. By doing this, what I have figured out, what remains unexplained is that if R&D is less in India and energy intensity has improved, then what is essentially leading to this improvement in energy intensity? And the point that I'm trying to explain here is that firms are investing their profits for importing modern energy saving capital goods to retrofit their existing plants, and which helps them lower their energy intensity without having to indulge in the long-term investment of R&D. So by doing this, the firms circumvent the lack of core indigenous R&D because they are importing capital goods and retrofit. But the other side of it is that the reliance on imports of green goods. Green goods are what? Those less intensive machinery, which improves which lowers the intensity of energy in the production process. These goods are used to achieve the energy intensity. So this is how I have tried to explain what is not understood. And then from there only, I am developing the opportunity or identifying the gap, that this is the gap. Did I highlight it? No, I think, okay. So this is the gap that I've highlighted. Okay. Then comes to the variable parts we have discussed. So I'll not spend too much time on this slide now. Okay. So the finding the research gap. Let me just shift this. Finding the research gap. Okay. 3 questions are guiding this specific publication. Which explanation dominates the existing literature? Okay. Does R&D activity explain the differences in firm level energy intensity? And is there a mechanism that is overlooked? So as I was showing you in that pink highlighted area, where has that gone? Yeah. So is there an area that has been overlooked? So this is the area where I'm trying to tell that instead of doing R&D, firms are easily consuming imported energy saving goods and retrofitting them into their plants. So the gap is that, has the role of imported intermediates been highlighted as a channel of technology transfer? But this has received limited attention. So without investing into technology, we have access to technology. Okay, so this is the storyline here. So having established the gap, now how do I frame my research work? Okay, so the policy I started from the policy is that we need, how do we realize industrial decarbonization? How do we decarbonize, achieve a low carbon industry? And the gap was that in this entire decarbonization sphere, we have been paying a lot of attention to focus on R&D, lower R&Ds, etc. But that R&D has not taken off in the Indian context. and energy intensity is improving, what is it that is at play? So the role of imported intermediates is not highlighted prominently. That's where I jump in to say, I will explain this. The question that I phrase for my work broadly is, does imported intermediate goods, or do these goods improve energy efficiency or energy intensity? And we will see at the end, the results show yes. So the lesson is that a publishable question links evidence-based findings with policy. So if I am able to answer this in a yes, then I will be able to say that how is industrial decarbonization channelized without R&D. Presently, this is the situation, and we will come to some shortcomings of this as well. So, developing the conceptual framework is that that when I talk of imported intermediates, then these intermediates, these capital goods, these energy-saving machinery, bring in the technology with them. So there is a technology transfer that is happening without having to create that technology. So we are just operating that technology, which then improves our production processes, lowers energy intensity, and improves the compliance of the iron and steel firms, because the cost of energy is less per unit item. So the profit or the cost competitiveness of the firm also improves. Now, if that happens, then that profit is then used to purchase more advanced capital goods, which help to save more energy, and that's how this profit is fed back to pay for those capital goods. So now that I have set up that framework, I must also phrase my testable hypothesis. So the first hypothesis that I phrase for my paper is that imported intermediates, that essentially this is imported capital goods which are imported, which are energy saving capital goods or energy saving goods, reduce the firm level energy intensity. That's one hypothesis which we will test. And the R&D expenditure does not have a significant effect on energy intensity. If we are able to validate the second hypothesis, then we will be able to say that even though whatever little is being spent on R&D, even though it is an R&D expenditure, it is not necessarily an R&D in the energy sphere. It could be an R&D in some process control, in some product development. But if that R&D expenditure, even though it is happening in a firm, is not focused, directed in their labs where energy is being reduced, processes for reducing energy, that R&D expenditure is not going to help us at all. And we will see this in the work. So the theoretical reasoning is that there is a technology diffusion theory that imported intermediates, imported capital goods, which embody those advanced energy-saving technologies and production know-how, bring access to that technology without having to create that technology. You just purchase that technology through that machine, and the firms improve their energy productivity, and energy intensity is lowered by incorporating these into their production processes. So a key point here that I want to inform you is that remember that the hypotheses that you set, they come from the theory. They don't come from data. So don't start to give a lot of emphasis to your data in the beginning of your work. Okay. But this is not to undermine the importance of data. What I'm only trying to tell you is that it is a very early stage to talk about data. But your data mining will take you a lot of effort, as I will show you in the following slide. So select now, you come to the data. So for this, I chose Center for Monitoring Indian Economy. This is an organization, and Provis is a database. So I chose the database because it provided me a rich panel over a period of time of Indian firms, specifically the iron and steel firms. It provided me all those financial variables which I talked to you, operational variables which I will need for energy studies, like energy expenditure, imported goods, etc. And it provided me consistent firm identifiers. I could identify a firm over a year or over a period of years in the panel, and therefore these are the reasons for which I picked up this specific data. Now remember your data set. Now having set up your hypothesis, having drawn from your theoretical foundation, now you are at a stage where you must now concentrate on your data. So the data set selection determines the credibility of your empirical research. If your variables are not appropriate in your data, they are weakly represented, there are limitations in your variables, then your data, now your questions are rich, your review is rich, your gap is identified, you set up a conceptual framework, you have related it to a theory that is existing. Now when you come to data, now if you compromise on the quality of data, all that rich work that you have done so far will be diluted. So remember, my first slide was different colors. So there are different stages. If you compromise on one, you are compromising on the quality of your publication. So everything, you might have a strong points at some stages, weak points at some, but you have to handle everything with care and with appropriate attention. So your data set has to be very good, appropriate. Once you have your data set, you have to operationalize your concepts into variables. So for instance, in the iron and steel, in my study, the concept was energy efficiency. Okay. Now there was no direct measure of efficiency. So the way my data allowed me to measure was I constructed a variable, a measure, which I called as energy intensity. So energy efficiency is the reciprocal of energy intensity. That means if a firm has high energy intensity for a unit of its output, so for instance, if it is consuming X joules of energy to produce one car, if it's an automobile firm, then, and another firm is consuming X minus delta X and joules of energy to manufacture one car, then the second firm is more efficient. It's using lesser energy to produce one car. The first firm is using more energy to produce the same car. Okay. So my energy efficiency was the concept that I wanted to assess, but and I conceptualized it through this measure. The technology transfer I measured through imported intermediates. So if the value of imported intermediate capital goods was higher, there's a higher expenditure on technology transfer. Firm capability in terms of its R&D expenditure, right? Scale of the firm, that means the size of the firm. It was measured in terms of its assets, the fixed assets owned by the firm. Experience and operational maturity of the firm was operationalized through the age variable. So firms which are older into business have a fair understanding of regulations, of how bureaucracy works, how machinery works, where to go for what. And the performance of the firm, the financial performance, was measured by profitability. So this is how I have concepts that I need to use in my model. And this is how I measure them from the data that I'm using to model my situation. Building the analytical data set. Now, I had to clean my data for inconsistencies, duplications, missing observations, and sometimes you have to differentiate between observations that are missing, that are absent, that are marked with a period, or when there's a zero. So you have to put a lot of cleaning effort data in at this stage, and you have to create your derived variables. Not everything is ready-made, but then you have to conceptualize your concepts to measurable outcomes. So that's where you create your variables, and then sometimes your variables have to be transformed appropriately. Sometimes you have to make indices, you have to make percentages, you have to standardize them using a min-max approach, or you have to make a log transformation, you have to make deviations from the mean, depending upon how you plan to measure it. So at this stage, a lot of empirical research effort goes, in this stage. So if your data is heavy, you will need to put in a lot of effort. Remember, running the model is not the key. Your results will be as good and dependable as your data is. So spend a lot of time in cleaning your data. And why? Because when your results come from your model, after you've run the model, you will be able to interpret those results if you have understood your data well. So understand your data very well. So know your data before running the regression. So now you have the data. Okay. So before you run into your empirical work, you should do some explanatory descriptive analysis. What is the range? What are the trends? What are the correlations? What are the outliers? Not all outliers have to be truncated. Some outliers can be very significant. Sometimes the skew of your curve, of your bell, is where you have to focus. So not that all outliers have to be dropped just because they're outliers. They might be exhibiting some very strong characteristic of your industry, of your data. So I want to show you this. I want to take you to the paper now. So data, variables, variable model. We have talked this all on the slide. And I'm talking of the model. I still haven't reached the model. Okay. I want to show you some descriptive statistics. Okay. So see, statistical description of the variables. So energy intensity, firm size, age. I'm not concentrating in my discussion on global value chain intensity because then it becomes too much. R&D intensity, profit, and the imports of capital goods. And when I write intensity, I have indexed them. Okay. So see the mean, which tells me that in my sample of firms, which is about 900 firms or say maybe more, overall energy intensity is 8.5 and there is a unit attached to it. The average firm size is 6.5 units of assets, fixed assets owned by a firm. The average age of the firm is 24 years old. That means there are fairly matured firms, but you can see that firms are as young as 1 year old. The minimum age is 1 and the maximum age is 115. So that means there are very old firms which are existing in the sample and very new firms. What does that tell me? That tells me that my sample is heterogeneous, which then makes a lot of ground to analyze this industry because it's so heterogeneous. To try and capture what is driving the reductions in energy intensity in a sector where firm ages vary from 1 to 115. On an average, 24 years old firm is a lot of age they have. R&D intensity, look at it. How dismal is this number? It's on an average, a firm spends less than 0.03 of its revenues on R&D, but it can go up to, it's the maximum value. Okay, it can go up to 21%. So that means there are some firms in iron and steel sector which are spending almost 1/5 of their revenues into R&D, whereas there are some firms which are not spending anything at all. So these descriptive statistics will give you a lot of insight. And if you understand this part well, it's not a table. You need to scan this for their insights. If you understand this better, then your results will make a lot of sense to you. So then similarly, so I'm using a mix. So I'm also telling you here that how to make your papers visually appealing. Use a combination of tables and graphs. See, there are no fancy graphs. These are simple pie charts. Nothing fancy, right? But I'm just telling that in terms of sale, top firms, bottom 25% firms are so less. So the sales are mostly concentrated in the top quartile. Top 25% of the sales are concentrated in carry a large proportion of sales, attribute a large proportion of sales. Similarly, R&D is also concentrated, and obviously these are going to be bigger firms. Q4, these are large firms, these are smallest firms. And these large firms are the ones which are importing advanced energy saving equipment and machinery, and therefore they are able to retrofit themselves. And that's why their energy intensity is lowering, is declining sharply, fastly. I will show you. So from this, if I have this argument, now look at this. Energy intensity of the topmost quartile is the lowest. The biggest firms have the lowest energy intensity, something which was coming out from this graph also, right? So different pieces of data are adding to my argument. And as I'm developing, what is my argument? Large firms have lower intensity of energy use. Why? Because they are also importing a lot of capital goods. Small firms have a higher energy intensity. So that argument should flow through. Every single argument should add to your insight. Now look at this. This is a trends in energy intensity. Okay. So the smallest line, the most broken line, the bottom line is Q4. That means the largest firms throughout the period of time have had the lowest energy intensities, which is also falling very sharply. Okay. Now, all firms, so the entire industry by it is very closely aligned to the large firms. What does this tell me? That the large firms are dominating the trends in the industry, which is what my earlier charts also show, that the Q4, the large firms are dominating the industry in its sales. So they are the drivers of reductions in energy intensity. So every piece of descriptive, I have not reached my empirics yet. Every piece of descriptive analysis is adding to my argument, is strengthening my argument, is taking me closer to, is motivating me to empirically investigate this finding, which I'm finding in an exploratory manner. All right. And so similarly, things are being talked in some other variables, R&D, etc. Let me now take you back to the presentation. So the regression should be the final step, not the first step. So don't jump to run your model until you have understood your data and the story your data is telling. If you have set the platform in your mind, you will be able to grasp your results much better rather than just saying this is 2.9 statistically significant, this is 3.8 statistically insignificant. If you understand the trends, the behavior of your data, you will be able to make sense of your regression coefficients. Understand your data before you ask your data the question that you want to answer. Choosing the econometric variable, of course, then Then you choose your model specification. Remember, your model specifications are driven by theory, not by your softwares. Softwares, whether you are working in Stata, you're working in R, you're working in Python, you are working in some other more sophisticated software, which I don't even know its name. That's not what will drive your model. Your model is driven by your journey up to now. All those slides that we have discussed are going to give you your ingredients for your model. So when you build your regression models, you should not load your variables entirely in the first specification. You should start with a restrictive specification and gradually add more, introduce more variables, not for the sake of adding columns to your output, your results table, for the sake that every single addition gives you an additional insight. Your incremental knowledge should align with more additional variables. So every addition or withdrawal of a variable from your specification should contribute to your better understanding of the problem at hand. And then, of course, overfitting, don't fall for this kind of a trap. Okay, every additional model should bring an insight to you. And reading the regression table is regression table is the evidence, it's the technical evidence. But from that technical evidence, you have to call out your narrative, which is in simple language. So don't focus on significance, etc. You should talk, but that's not where you should end. You have to interpret the science. If it is positive, what does it mean for energy intensity? If its magnitude is high, what does this variable imply? What is its economic sense? What is its confidence? And what is its consistency across different specifications? That will tell you the robustness of your fits. Now that you've got your results, I just want to check the time. Okay, now that you've talked of the results, you've got your results, you must transform your coefficients into a narrative. What do the findings imply about what? About the key variables that I studied: technology transfer and R&D. And so, for instance, in my results, where is my paper? Yeah. So let me just turn it for you. And what I'm trying to show you, see, my RN, look at this row. Okay. My R&D is consistently statistically significant in all my specifications. But in my last specification, the moment I introduce this variable, which is what imports of capital goods, the moment I introduce this variable, this becomes significant and this does not. That tells me that the R&D, that the use of energy friendly, energy saving imported equipment is what is driving, the negative sign tells me, is driving down the energy intensity. And that's what I want. I want to save energy. So I want to lower my energy intensity. Okay. So the negative sign tells me, and in its presence, R&D gets totally ruled out. It has no statistical significance. That means it has no impact. It is not contributing to lowering or of any. The sign is negative, but the impact is not significant. So the R&D is not contributing to improvements in energy. It is the imported route which is helping. Okay. So that's how I interpreted my findings, my numbers, my evidence to create a narrative, and then connect this evidence back to the hypothesis 1 and 2, which we had set for ourselves. So the review process. So having done this, I don't end up here. I must show you this. Okay, so I have talked about this. I highlighted this.
Um, okay, so I got the numbers, I explained them, I interpreted them. Now see, how do I link them up to policy? These improvements, the firms rely on imported capital goods for technological upgrades and retrofits. These improvements in energy intensity, are facilitated through brownfield installations, aligning with the technology roadmap of the International Energy Association. So I draw evidence in support from some other reports, which recognizes that retrofitting is a retrofitting as a sustainable emissions strategy. Retrofitting also allows for some fuel switching to lower carbon or alternative fuels. Consequently, there will be an increased emphasis on retrofits even for newer and younger steel making plants, right? But I don't end there only. So that means that we are dependent. The R&D is not happening. We are not we are not improving we are not moving. R&D in energy is not what is leading to this improvement. It is the retrofit, imported retrofit. So that's one insight I bring out through my numbers. But see, there's a policy implication which is here. For policy, these findings underscore that we are critically dependent on imported green technologies. So all that net zero, this was 2-3 years back, okay? So all that net zero, all those industrial decarbonization, low carbon industry that we are doing, essentially we are able to march forward on our decarbonization on the strength of imported green technology. Then what does that tell? Which tells us that we are vulnerable. This makes us dependent on imported capital goods, may further widen this gap between indigenous technology and R&D. If we continue to import, because that's the easier way for the firm, by not investing in R&D, which is a long-term investment, so then we will continue to increase our dependence on import. And then the political, the geopolitics of import dependence makes us more vulnerable to international shocks, etc. And therefore, although we are at the moment managing through imported imports, but in the long run, we have to indigenously spend on our R&D. That's how I bring closure to the paper. So for your review process, once you have selected the journal, you submit. The paper is editorial, goes for desk screening, editor screening. It is sent for peer review. It is mostly blind, but recently it's named as well. Then revisions occur and then acceptance occur. In this process, remember, it's a very bitter statement that your reviewer is not your enemy, but it's hard to take when it's your paper on the desk. I completely agree, but try and take those comments in a positive spirit. They are not obstacles. They are trying use them into to strengthen your paper. So lessons for some early career researchers who might be attending this lecture would be that you should always start with an important question. You should read very strategically in a very pointed manner and follow the charts that I'd shown you. Build a transparent, replicable, expandable methodology. Let the evidence shape your storytelling process. Write, revise, and be patient. So publication is not merely an analysis, it is an outcome of a lot of things at different stages which you go through. So with that, this was my last slide. With that, I come to end and thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this insightful session. Uh, we will now open the floor for questions. Participants may either raise their hands or post the questions in the chat box. Okay, one of the questions we have received that at times the findings may differ from the findings of the existing research studies. How to defend it?
So discussed about this, and this is a very this is a point worth discussing again. If your findings are not aligned with the broader literature, then you have to defend them. And you will be able to defend them only if you've done two things honestly. If you have understood what the existing literature is talking about, what those authors, your baseline authors, your benchmark authors, what they did, what variables they consider, and what is your data, underlying data, what is the characteristic of your data. So that can, explain a lot of variation. And if you can do this, then it's perfectly fair to be challenging a theory or something, some doctrine which is well established. But you should be able to defend it in a very robust manner. That's very important.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The next question is, what is the ideal sample size?
Okay, so for what? So this there is I should not and I cannot give one number to this answer because it depends what you are doing. So your panel data your panel regressions require a different kind of a sample size. Your time series needs more time series, much longer one. Your cross section can manage, that can happen for one period of time, but then your number of firms or your number of units has to increase. And sometimes if you're doing case studies, then the question of sample does it rise at all? I think so. So depending upon your question, and sometimes also within your methodology, what specific test you are putting your data to. So sometimes your specific tests also require a minimum sample size to be available to you. So that is a very situational.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Is there any other question from any participant?
I think there is one hand. Sambik, please go ahead. Your mic is mute.
Madam, you're focusing on the manufacturing sector analysis. So your main agenda is to what are the new trends in the manufacturing sector, and what are the new implication, what are the new how the sector has improving, and what are the new constituents coming in the manufacturing sector. So how could draft a good title for if you are going if you're choosing a manufacturing sector, how can you choose a good title which can effectively give a good analysis of the manufacturing?
That's a very that's a question. I can't say it's important, but it's a stage which one faces. So if I go by my experience, when I start writing the paper, I put a title, which I think at that point of time. And trust me, by the time, every day, every section that I advance, and it's not a linear progression. Sometimes you start, I feel, oh, this is a review part, or sometimes I feel, oh, this is a methodology. So there's a lot of back and forth of material. So every the title is iterative. It is an iterative process.
Because, ma'am, basis on the title only, the whole paper will be revolved. If the title is not drafted properly, the paper will go west. Paper will go west,
Yes.
and
So
again you have to redraft the paper.
yeah. So there is, see, remember, so the title is, it has to be very, very interesting. Remember, if it's a journal paper, it should not be a catchy title. It should not be a fancy caption. It's not a newspaper. So keep it balanced, keep it jargon free, keep it
Yes.
clean, not necessarily short, but
It should
keep
be
it
simple,
clean,
concise.
concise. It should communicate the highlight of your paper.
Yes, ma'am.
It
It should
should
not be
give,
too flashy. It should not be too flashy or too much jargon
it should not
reflected
be. It
in
should
jargon
not
work.
be.
Like it can be re-emphasizing, recapitulating. Like this type of words should be there so that it can able to make a good analysis of the manufacturing trends.
And be honest to yourself. Title it based on what you have done.
Yes.
Don't
Be
be motivated with fancy languages. Don't be driven by
because fancy language won't help you in captivating your ideas, in
True.
captivating your thoughts, and keep analyzing your thoughts move forward as you are writing, as you're writing more forward to your ideas. So this is very important. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So it should be very much very motivating, as well as it should be very much like transparent to the
Yes.
reviewer, transparent to the reviewer.
It should be informing the content.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And it's not something which you will freeze. You will keep changing it, and changing it. For instance, something called as sustainability. You know, so I was doing a title to one of my papers, and I sent the abstract. I prepared the abstract, and I used the word sustainability. Almost a week later, I realized can you give me a moment? Almost a week later, I figured out that I used the word sustainability, whereas my work was only on the environmental aspect of sustainability. So I had to edit. I had to change it after I had sent my abstract to a conference.
Ma'am, I'm also working on the environment only. I'm also working also. So I'm understanding that emphasizing on the environment aspects need to put emphasis on the words which are related with the environment, or which are very much attached with the environment aspect.
Because
so that it helps.
So that word sustainability would have given a sense that the sustainability is in terms of environment, is in terms of inclusivity, which is social, in terms of governance. Whereas I was not talking about gender, workforce. So that sustainability was a very wider word. So I had to qualify it as environmental sustainability, so that the expectations of the reviewer are not, completely very
Sustainability,
high.
they will ask you.
They'll
ask you what do you mean by the sustainability? What sustainability? How you sustain yourself? It is like eco-centric sustainability, human-centric sustainability. So many sustainability outcomes are there. You have to specifically stick to particular agenda.
So yes, so we believe if there are no more questions from the participants, so I request Ajaz sir to have a vote of thanks. Conclude the session now.
All right.
Then
So
yeah, please.
first of all, thank you so much for ma'am for detailed explanation for the questions, so for being asked by the participants. So on behalf of organizers and all the participants, I extend my sincere gratitude to Dr. Anjali Tandon ma'am for sharing her valuable insights and practical experiences on the research publication journey. And I'm sure your guidance on developing research into publishable work will undoubtedly benefit all researchers and faculty members present today. Thank you for your time, ma'am, and your expertise and this inspiring interaction. So before I hand over the session to Dr. Firdos, I would like to thank all the participants for this active presence and engagement. We look forward to welcome you to the next session on this faculty development program. Have a wonderful evening ahead and stay safe. And thank you once again. Over to Dr. Firdos, sir.
As we conclude day 8 of the International Faculty Development Program, we extend our sincere gratitude to Dr. Anjali Tandon, Associate Professor, for delivering an insightful session which started the journey of publication, and she draws some reflections from firm level sectorial study of Indian manufacturing. So her thoughts, reflection on navigating the publication process, then she touched some developing high quality research, and later she also translating empirical evidence into impactful scholarly work. This really provided valuable guidance to all the participants, I believe, today. We also express our heartfelt appreciation to Dr. Syed Ajaz from Asian Business School for his excellent moderation, his engaging felicitation and insightful interaction enriched the session and fostered this meaningful academic collaboration. So therefore, the Jammu and Kashmir Economic Association, together with all the collaborating institutions, SSI, Crescent University, Global Research Forum, and Rachna School of Business, Vocational College, University of Delhi, thanks both the resource person and moderator for their valuable contribution to making the day 8 a truly enriching learning experience. We wish them continued success in their academic and research endeavors. So I am now stopping the recording. We can have a group photo. Please sit a while.